welcome to Do the Right Thing, your weekly writing prompt podcast. I'm Matias.
And I'm Jarvis.
Jarvis and I are aspiring writing machines, but of course, we never actually sit down and take the time to write.
Exactly. So we're doing a little challenge. Each week we set a timer. Our goal is to write a complete short story using 3 of 4 randomly generated words.
Then we come on the podcast, we read the one story we wrote, because we alternate now, talk about what we learned in writing them, and then talk about stories written by you listeners.
We're simply here to help you do the right thing.
Do the right thing. A Doof Media production.
Bada bing, we did it. Yet again, Another week. How we doing?
This is for us, it's the last week of classes, which don't feel real because they're all online.
So they're not really classes.
And then it's finals. I don't even know how my classes are doing finals, so that's going to be a fun surprise to find out.
Yeah. I mean, the hope is that it isn't like a whole bunch of work. I mean, what I'm hearing is that most of them are just taking like either the second essay or second major assignment as the final, but again, it varies across the entire board. So
yeah, so just to talk about a few things before we get into the stories proper. So one big announcement is we hit 375 patrons last night, which is not just an arbitrary number that I'm very happy about. It's the patron goal for Doof Publishing. So what we're aiming to do is we're going to be looking into the feasibility and coming up with some plans, but basically making a Doof book that's going to have some writing from the Doof Squad, so that's the other podcasters and Jarvis and I, and then as well some writing from you guys, particularly people who do the right thing. You guys could edit your stories and submit them to be considered to be entered in the book, and it would be a physical book that people can actually buy, which is super exciting. There's not much more satisfying than like holding an object that has your work in it. But anyway, it's too early to really explain all the plans and what exactly it's going to be, as we're still figuring all that out. But I'm very, very excited.
Yeah, and I mean, the opportunity to get published doesn't really come around that often, especially when it's being brought directly to you. So of course, if you want your work to be published, just keep hearing out for any more details we might release about that.
Yeah, so that's the big thing. I think the next patron goal is for a Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality fan art contest.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's around 400 patrons. So that's with the We Want More folks. So that's exciting as well. And then there's so many other Doof projects also in the works, but that's for later. Otherwise, personally, I've started. Actually, this is a really weird transition. So that's the Doof stuff I wanted to talk about before we get into the proper episode. On more personal things, I started antidepressants last week. So hopefully that's supposed to pick up my mood. Still seeing how this actually works, but it's a development. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, it is definitely a work in progress along with mental health, but it is great that you're actually making steps to feel better. So I'm very proud of you on that front.
Yeah, what was really annoying though is that I started them about a week ago, so when there was 2 weeks left of classes, and they take about 2 weeks to take effect. So it's kind of like, maybe I should have done this earlier, so I could actually get some assignments done. But oh well. So yeah, I think we can get into the story proper.
So the words for this week are freighter, frame, restaurant, and theft.
Well, it was fame, but yeah. So I used Allbot restaurant, so fame, freighter, and theft. What I thought was interesting is that looking at all the stories that were submitted, there was a lot of Cyberpunk stuff, including mine. Yeah, that was the theme of this week, which is interesting because it actually doesn't have anything specifically Cyberpunk in it. It's just got, theft, so you got the crime element of Cyberpunk, and then freighter, which is a mechanical thing, and then restaurant and fame, I guess, were more like motivation and setting modifiers, so that was interesting. I almost set my thing in a restaurant, and then I decided since I wasn't using that word, I shouldn't.
Nice. So How was the process of writing the story this week?
I thought I would have it done earlier. I wrote, I think on Thursday, that was like with the third day of starting antidepressants, so I was actually like kind of high energy because, well, I don't know the chemical names, but it's basically like a mild stimulant.
Yeah.
So I was like kind of hyped and ready to do stuff. So I wrote some of it, mostly the dialogue, which was like really easy to just to flow with just thinking of like a good line and then writing that down, thinking of a response. And at that point I hadn't even had characters, so it was just kind of dialogue at each other. And eventually I had enough that was like almost enough for a story, but of course it was like blobs of dialogue without like much stuff connecting them. So and no setting and no character names, etc. Yesterday I added a bit more of the setting, but not enough to like finish it, and then today I actually did the rest. So it was multi-part, and but I think it's fairly well done. It's not like a poignant piece. It's more just like a scene that we sometimes do. So it's like a chapter one, I guess.
Okay.
And even then, I mean, it wouldn't be that great of a chapter one. It's like it's a scene. Let's just put it that way.
Well, of course you did only write it in what, like 3 days, so of course it's not going to be your magnum opus, but
yeah, no, it's not trying to be, but it's I think it's some characters I had been working on before in a vague setting, so it's more just an exploration of not even exploration of an idea. It's just like wanting to put some work into some worlds that I was working on and stuff. So, but all right, I can just go ahead and start.
All right, can't wait to hear it.
So I apologize getting to this. It's a little bit long, but I hope that you guys enjoy it as I read it. So, the story is called Job Offer. The hideout was a ramshackle den in the midst of a condemned sector. The meeting was clandestine, as most of my meetings were, so I had to leave my ship behind at the dock, get there on an air bike. My bird wasn't big, but it was too shiny and new to blend into the towering plasticrete tenements and the blown-around refuse of the sector. It would stand out like an arch count at a fish market. So I took the air bike. I kept the engine quiet as I whooshed over roofs, over the gaps between buildings, into the abandoned halls of Compu workspaces, the cheap cubicles having already crumbled to dust over just a few decades. The air bike was as sleek as it was quiet. My only trace were the small plumes of dust that followed me over ledges. I arrived at the cords, an alleyway created from two tenements leaning into one another. The triangular space formed by the buildings was dark. I sent 2 cam drones to circle the area. The visual in my visor confirmed that there was no movement or shininess in the area. I parked the bike under an overhang, out of sight. It was in standby mode, ready to be remotely piloted to me if I needed it. This was probably all overkill, but it was a good habit to have. I went inside. It was dark, but after ducking under debris, I found the door. I placed my hand on the door, made the small servos in my glove vibrate to the tune of that old folk song, No Horse Too Tall for Me, an old password. I sent a command for my faceplate to open, show my face. I still had access to the drone feeds through my eyes, modded as they were. A slot in the door opened, revealing 2 dark and very organic eyes. The door opened. Darcio opened the door, giving me an almost genuine grin, though it didn't seem to meet his eyes. He was a big guy, and wore a bigger jacket. Too many pockets. He seemed slow sometimes, but I was pretty sure it was just a front. The guy had rewired a disabled explosive and planted it under a contraband officer's desk before the officer could find the form they were looking for. He clapped an arm on my shoulder as I walked in. "Good to be working with you again, Cass," he told me. I hadn't confirmed that I'd be working with them yet. I stayed quiet for the moment. He shouted into the den. "Marty! She's here!" I heard rustling and quiet curses from the other room. The den wasn't that much better than outside. Ash-covered floors, corrugated metal walls, and the ceiling sagged in the corner where a support beam had punched through, letting in a faint glimmer of the gray clouds. The room was dominated by a large table, a flattened metal sheet on top of 2 square chunks of plasticrete. I expected the other rooms probably had a few more of the personal effects. But dens were made to be easy to bug out and deny their existence. "What can you tell me about the job, Darcio?" I asked. He was quiet, but he also didn't hold secrets to be as important as others. I hoped to get a more honest perspective from him than I would from Marty. "Dunno. Marty's kept quiet about it. Said he didn't want to explain more than once. Wanted you here for it. I frowned. Usually Marty had to be told to shut up about his plans. Marty came out, short and thin. His grin was wide and revealed gappy teeth. I always wondered why he didn't fix them. He spread his arms wide as if to hug. Cassie, always good to see you. I held out a hand to stop him. Marty, the name is Cass, and you called me here? He took my hand in both of his and gave it a good shake. Right. Let's get down to business. So, he spread his hands. I have a job. A big one. Spit it out, I said. An opportunity has been revealed to me. A certain customer wants to obtain a Furon core, and knows that one is going to be particularly vulnerable at a mill factory in the Royal Industrial Quarter. That opportunity closes 1 week from now. So we'd be stealing a Furon core? I said, folding my arms. That wasn't small fry. Stealing from a military factory? One of the most valuable items in said military factory, too? So it's a heist job, Darcio said. What's the big deal? This isn't petty theft, Darcio, I said. This is sabotage times 2. You know what a Furon core is good for? 2 things. 1, I counted on my hand, powering city-busting leviathans. And 2, blowing a hole in the ground big enough to bury a capital cruiser in. Darcio let out a low whistle. I sympathized. I turned to Marty. What are you, a rebel now? I raised an eyebrow. Marty gave me a sidelong grin. I wouldn't say that. A customer is a customer, after all. And if that customer happens to be the rebellion, or happens not to be, well, he gave me a shrug. A job is a job. You're planning on sabotaging a major royal asset, the loot of which will be used to blow up some other royal assets. Sounds like rebels to me. I folded my arms. I didn't have a problem with rebels, specifically, but being labeled as one was generally unproductive for business. Royal forces tended to let organized crime by, so long as some forms of tribute or services were allowed for the aristocracy. Sometimes, a noble wanted someone or another dead, or a warm bed specially catered to them, and those desires took precedent over any petty laws. Rebels, though, they didn't get that leeway, hence why skyscraper-sized leviathans were using crackdowns nowadays. Is every criminal a rebel? Marty replied. No. What about every cop shooter? They're taking down royal assets, aren't they? Is every whore pocketing extra cred sticks from house heads a rebel? No, didn't think so. He shook his head. No fame, no glory, just cold hard cash, the knowledge that we fucked up some administrator's day, big time. It's all just business. That knowledge you mentioned doesn't sound like business. He gave me a gappy, mean grin. No, that's pleasure. About business, I said. Why bring me on? Split the take an extra way. This is a big job. I can't do this alone. You've got a good track record, Cassie. What did I say about my name? I said, my hand resting on my hand blaster. He put up his hands while talking. And we've got a good rapport going. The job is big enough I need the help. You've got more connects than I do in certain quarters, and that ship of yours is a damn good getaway vehicle. I didn't let that sentence touch my pride, even though it was true. There seemed to be information missing here, though. Why don't the rebels do this themselves? I said. It's their info, isn't it? These rebels don't know who to ask out here. They're not in this sector much. So they ask me, and I'm asking you, and then we're both going to ask some others for some favors. Outsourcing. I sighed. There probably was an answer somewhere, but Marty didn't have it. Most likely, the rebellion just wanted to keep their members safe. Better to employ some low mercenary scum to do their work for them. They were cowardly, like that. What's the take? Marty practically glowed. Well, I'm so glad you asked. 900,000. After costs, hirelings, we're talking $250,000 each. Damn. I had hoped the pay would be low so I could say no. 900,000 was not low. With $250,000, I could do some serious overhauls on my bird. And my heart thumped a little. Pay off a lot of Faye's debts. She needed my help. Fuck. Fine, I said. Tell me about the job. I reserve the right to renegotiate after assessing the risks myself, though. That a girl, Marty said. That disgusting grin plastered across his face. I didn't understand why he didn't use some of that grand theft money to buy himself some new teeth. Replace the cracked and blackened ones. It wasn't even that expensive. Mercenary work didn't come with dental, but for the good ones, it paid enough for that not to be a problem. Darcio? I asked. Yep, I'm in. Been in, Darcio said. He rubbed his hands together. $250,000 is nothing to sneeze at here. Great, Marty said. Be right back. He went to the other room. You know we're talking about handling a bomb, right? I said to Darcio. A city-destroying bomb. I dealt with bombs before, all the time, Darcio said. The trick is to not drop 'em or shoot 'em. Marcy returned from the other room with an armful of pages and a data reader, or 4. He spilled it all on the table, grabbing the thickest roll and spreading it out over the table, the ends curled up. He explained, I've had to move to analog after Royals developed that new scanning tech. Picks up loose data far easier than before. He looked my suit up and down. Not everyone can afford dampeners in their damn clothing. I raised an eyebrow. What are the data readers for, then? Paperweights. He placed them at the corners of the page. It stopped curling up. So, this is the factory where they're working on the Leviathans. I took the time to examine the blueprints. Marty explained some aspects and answered some of my questions. It was complicated, practically a city in itself, except pumping out an endless stream of weapons, armor, mechs, and more for the royal armies. It was heavily guarded. This is a fortress. I can see how we might get in, but soon as we grab the core, every alarm would blare. We'd never get out. You're right, this thing is a fortress. But look at this. The freighters ship out and moon down, every day. They're on an automated track, no interruptions except for emergencies, ever. The royalty can't ever take any delays. So, here's what we do. We get the core, we get something to dampen its energy, hide it, we put it in a box, put that box on a freighter, have them smuggle out their own core, I finished, understanding. Yes, exactly, Marty said, getting more excited. And a freighter is damn a lot easier to raid or rob than a Leviathan factory. They won't even know what's missing. Well, shit. That wasn't a bad idea. It would be dangerous, and there was 100 things we had to find out more about. But looking at the blueprints, well, it couldn't hurt to at least try and figure out a plan before I said no. We spent some more hours planning. There were a couple more jobs we'd have to do before we could put it into action. Get the security credentials of at least a 5th Order noble, grab enough explosives for a cross-factory distraction, and have someone invent a stealthy cargo carrier. But other than that, it was doable. On paper, at least. After a while, we were done. Idly, I asked, what do you think the rebels want with the core? A bomb? Marty just kind of wobbled his head. Maybe. But that's not really our problem, is it? Maybe they got their own Levi, Darcio said. The idea was disconcerting. Rebellion did enough damage with ships and bodies. Giving them a 60 stories tall mechanical demolition machine was worrying. So, are you in? Marty looked at me expectantly. I shook it off. It was a job, like any other. If it wasn't me, it'd be someone else. And I needed the money. Or more specifically, Faye needed the money. She couldn't afford me not taking this. I sighed. I'm in.
Well, that was a awesome story, Matias. It was a nice little plotting session between all of these really wonderful characters that you made. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
Thanks. There's not like a ton of backstory to this. It actually I remember finding the note in my notepad. The actual idea is something that doesn't really show up in this, but what spawned the character was I wanted to write a story where like the mercenary with a heart of gold, the Han Solo type, like at the critical moment actually does betray the team and doesn't go back, and like why they might do that and how they might still be a good person. So like that's what Cass's destiny is. That's why I decided to write her. But obviously this doesn't actually show up in this specifically.
Yeah, I mean, based off of like what you read and what we read, this definitely does, as you said, feels like the beginning portion of a much longer story. But like you are perfectly setting up all these chips, right? Like you're setting up who these characters are and how they're kind of interacting, and how it's not all like there's this certain sense of hostility there between some of the characters, and I really like that. Like that can prove to be developed further if you do choose to continue on with this. So
yeah, there was some things I did intentionally as I went in. I knew I wanted there to be more than one character, right? in more than 2, but I decided against going more than 3 because then it becomes pretty hard to make sure everyone has a good amount of characterization.
Yeah, and making sure every character that is there is purposeful and like has a point. Yeah,
right. I'm playing off of. I'm not playing off. I'm using tropes. There's the smarmy short guy that talks fast and can get you on the side, and then there's the big and quiet type, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm using these to just like not have to explain that much, and so you can like pick up a lot of their voice without me having to like actually take a ton of time to characterize them.
Yeah.
Because you can fill in the rest. And then if I were to keep, continue writing and stuff like that, then I would subvert and mix them up. But it's a good starting point, I think. To just use them as a trope.
Yeah, definitely. And speaking on tropes, first and foremost, I think, as you said, this is a really great usage of the tropes. Like, as soon as you started to describe certain characters, I knew exactly what they probably looked like and probably sounded like. And on that idea of trope, since this is, it seems like it's going to become a typical-esque heist story. Is there a moment later on in the story that's all going to go wrong?
Oh, of course. I mean, you can't. It should go wrong like multiple times, basically. The thing about heist is that it's like a really like nice structure to work with, mm-hmm. right? You have the gathering of the team, which of course that's what they also have to do. It's like they're gonna start with these 3, and then it's gonna add a couple more to round out the cast.
Specialists.
Yeah, and then you have like your mini like mission beforehand, so that you prep, and then it's the final thing. You have the last planning session. And then the thing starts, something goes wrong, and then it's solved, or there's consequences, and etc. So yeah, it's a good structure to work with. I don't know if I'm actually gonna go through and do the whole story, but it's good to add more to. I mean, I've written like 2 chapters of this before. Oh. It looked pretty damn different, but
is it a good different or a bad different?
Yeah, no, it's a good different. The scenes I wrote for that one, they might like come back. In some form, but they were kind of aimless, and I didn't really know what I was doing. So it's all about just getting closer to like actually knowing what you're doing. I think this is a bit closer. What did you think of the description at the beginning? Did it flow well, or? Yeah,
the description of the beginning flowed really well, and I think it was. I mean, that like the beginning kind of worked to set up this cyberpunk-esque world. I really did like how a lot of the cyberpunk elements were set up in that beginning paragraph, and how for half of it felt like a lot of the cyberpunkiness was in the background. But of course, as they started going towards plotting the actual heist, that's when we fully get kind of pushed into exactly what this core is and what a Leviathan is, and more so about the world during that section. Like, there's great world building that you are doing, and I feel that because you mention Rebels so often, that will probably come into play much later on in the story if you do choose to like continue on this.
Yeah, there's some things I eventually want to do with it. I want them to be like they are like the royal. The aristocracy and the royals are like definitely worse than what the rebels would be, mm-hmm. but the rebels also aren't like that great either. And so I had like with coming up with the character, it was I think I wrote some dialogue like originally, not in this, but where they kind of just like rant at one of the like rebel leaders or whatever, mm-hmm. and like decry them for like wanting to like rescue people, but like they also like make things worse for a lot of other people at the same time. When the rebels become more of a problem and like people are getting like searched on the street and stuff, like that's bad for the average citizen in addition to like just the rebels. Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, so just adding some conflict into the world that way.
Yeah. I think one thing that I also really liked is how there isn't a single character who is in the right? Because you mm-hmm. talked about the rebels being, of course, rebels, so they're, not painted in the best light. You talked about the aristocracy basically foregoing the law when they seem fit, and they're okay with other people doing it as long as it's not directly going against the government. And then you have our main characters who There was one line where Kaz was talking about how she doesn't like the label of rebel, and she isn't a rebel, but the things that they are doing can be seen as rebellious. So I don't know. I just kind of liked that,
Right.
the dynamic that you're kind of setting up here.
Yeah, it's interesting. The process of writing it was like I didn't necessarily go in with, that idea of the world building or like what the whole dynamics were and what Cass's thoughts are on it, but it was like having these flashes of inspiration with the dialogue where I was like, I want Marty to be saying, is every criminal, are they a rebel because they're like stealing from the rich and causing problems? If they shoot a cop and the cop works for the royal government, does that make that criminal a rebel? Mm-hmm. And like it just like I wanted to write that down, and then I was like, okay, well, what causes that? And so I would go back and add more lines, and then it'd be who's responding to what. So having this the character focused or character inspired motivations for writing to drive me forward really helped a lot. That's something I don't often get, and I think I need to lean into that and try to get that more. I've never been a person that where like my characters like feel alive in my head like some other writers talk about. Mm-hmm. But I think this is a way to like get that to be closer to being true. I don't know if like maybe that can happen to everyone. You just have to like work on it enough, or if that's just like particular to some people. But yeah, this was closer to that, where like didn't necessarily plan this out like I often do. So I think that might be something good to try out in the future, is to just like let myself just figure out these characters like directions, and then let the dialogue and flow and develop the characters and the conflict through there.
Yeah. I mean, of course, in the limited time that you had to write, I already see like this great character development. Like for instance, with the character of Kaz, like I can definitely see this character traversing this world, and as we're following her journey, we're learning more about the world also. So I think I think you are definitely, as you said, heading towards the right direction of definitely focusing on that character. Like literally for, I would say the majority of this short story is just dialogue between characters, and you're slowly getting more and more about each one, and it's lovely to read. So very, very good. If you did have a second opportunity though to go back and maybe think of a lot more of where you want to take these characters, what would you change on that second go?
I think this is kind of like what I was wanting to practice.
Okay.
So I'm kind of like satisfied with what I've done here. This is definitely not like a final version. It's more that like what I would want to do is that like I would go through, finish the story, right, and then go back and rewrite this chapter entirely, because this is like a setup chapter for my own brain, right? It's not really a setup chapter for like actual readers. So and then when I go back, I would be adding other conflicts. Like I have a little tiny bit in here about this woman Faye who Cass is actually like in love with, but it's like really, I mean, you don't necessarily know about the love part. Mm-hmm. But that's why Cass takes the job, is to pay those off. So I would like be developing that further, have that more important in her brain, have her worrying about that more, or foreshadow it in some way. But yeah, I think for like this specifically, like there's not really that much like I would want to change until like I have the rest of it figured out.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, to be honest, trying to go back and change things without knowing where it's going. I'm not going to say it's futile, but that you should definitely take that moment to, at least in my case, I like to take moments and just plot out everything that's going to happen and let the words fall in later. And I think with this story, it can definitely benefit from that.
Yeah, and the other thing is, when you're writing long stories like this would be, if I did, there's a tendency to like want to just like keep fixing the beginning, mm-hmm. right? To keep re-editing that first chapter, and it's okay to do that like once or twice just to like figure out what you're trying to do. But after that, like you really at some point you do have to move on and actually write the story. And after you write the story, you're going to change that first chapter anyway. Mm-hmm. So, like I've fallen into that trap, and a lot of other people have fallen into that trap. But really, in my opinion, you should just like set it down and just keep moving forward. And if like you figure out, oh no, Cass is actually a guy, you don't change it. Don't go back and change it until you're done, basically.
Yeah, because I mean, you can change the beginning as many times as you possibly want, but it means nothing if you don't have the ending.
Right, yeah. So I think focusing on finishing stuff is really good. Hopefully, with... well, then again, I was about to say hopefully I'll have more time now that I don't have classes, but that's not really how this works.
Yeah,
so
we're still doing the right thing. 30 minutes.
Yeah. Maybe I'll add more chapters to this in the future, Maybe I'll just, like, skip to, like, the heist or something. No reason to actually like go chronological if it's not interesting. So that's all my story. We probably talked about it for too long already.
Sure, yeah. So I guess next up would be our listener submitted stories, which if you haven't read the stories for this week, please stop right now, stop this episode, and go and read them. We're going to spoil them all very, very badly. And they're all really, really good and deserve a good read. So please go stop and do that.
If you like Cyberpunk stuff, this is a perfect time for that. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, we had a lot of cool Cyberpunk stuff, so I highly recommend it. So we'll be talking about stories by Zakatigi, Ghost Pac-Man 4, Captain Rhino, Sarah Penguin, and Paradox. If you weren't selected this week, don't worry. Every single time that you did the right thing, your chance of getting selected goes up. So if you write next week, you'll have a much higher chance to get selected. As well as if you wrote two comments. And there were a lot of comments this week. That was very, very satisfying. So yeah, you guys are doing a really, really great job, and I absolutely. It's awesome that you guys do that, particularly because it invites feedback back and forth. I can see you guys, like, when we first started doing this incentive, some of the comments were shorter, and now they're getting longer as you guys, are getting even better at diving into, your own perspectives and thoughts on and reactions to the writing. So that's fantastic. You guys are doing a really great job.
So real quick, my brain just made a connection, and I think the reason why we're getting so many Cyberpunk stories this week is because I'm pretty sure yesterday Cyberpunk 2077 was supposed to come out. Yeah,
really?
Because I vaguely remember when I first heard the announcement. First and foremost, being so excited, and then setting a date for April 24th, I think. So maybe that's why we're getting so many Cyberpunk stories this week, because we're all really missing our promised game.
Oh, is it? It was supposed to come out, but it's not out.
Yeah,
it's not out.
It was supposed to come out April 24th, I think, but it was pushed back twice. Which is hilarious, because that game was like, what, they announced that game in 2010. And they said, all right, it's coming out next year. And they just kept pushing it back as far as they pushed it back now. So,
yeah, maybe. Well, September 17th is the release date now. So if you guys are interested, pay attention to that. It's by the same people who made Witcher.
I know.
So I hope it's good.
I'm going to fucking waste my entire life playing that game. Hopefully. I'm really banking on it being good. I'll be quite disappointed if it's actually boo-boo garbage.
Yeah, that'll be sad. Well, all right, so that's our sponsorship for the day.
All right. So
all right, let's get into the stories proper. Yeah.
And the first story up is Captain Rhino with The Greatest Cause.
So we start off this story with some very awkward pickup lines as this woman Hannah is drinking at a bar. This man approaches her. And she's not having it. It comes across both in her dialogue and her narration. The narration says "ugh." Hannah turned back to her drink, and then when the man sits down next to her, she puts a knife to him.
To his crotch.
And then he mentions a name, Victor, and so. We actually kind of pretty quickly understand that he's speaking in some sort of code, and he's actually she works for some kind of assassination or crime sort of thing, and he is actually here to give her a job. And so they are like talking in code, so that if anyone's listening, it just sounds like they're making idle conversation, but really he's conveying that she's going to kill someone. That, like, here's a line here. This is a high priority target, and Victor is feeling generous. He thinks you have a lot of promise, and if this goes well, it might be time for you to meet some more of his family. So we totally understand that Victor might not be an actual person, or is just like the symbolic name for like the boss or something. And meeting his family is like going higher up. Like meeting members of the mafia family, right? It's not like family, actually, yeah. Right. It's not like actual relatives, but it's like they're bonded together, right? So that's some cool code speak there that we can like pick up on, and I really that kind of double talk is probably like really fun to write, and it's really fun to read. So Hannah reluctantly accepts the job because the guy is like kind of pressuring her, but she doesn't have enough information to really like make a good decision. So we totally understand that by the end of this, she's totally going to like regret this, and this is going to be way worse than she knows. But she takes it anyway. So I obviously the double talk is my favorite part about this.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and I like the character of Hannah, who's both like very confident in herself, but also like actually kind of ruled by fear and uncertainty. Or maybe that's going a little too far, but she definitely like doesn't want to disappoint this organization at all. She's worried about it.
Yeah, definitely. I know when I was reading, as soon as Hannah pulled out the knife, I instantly liked the character because I don't know that move is just so characterizing, right?
and also she just pulls a knife on any man that tries to flirt with her.
Yeah, because she didn't know that this person was a part of this assassin's organization. So it could have just been some random Joe Schmo trying to spit a mad game. So I mean, that was very fun. And of course, like the doublespeak is written really well to where we can pick up on both aspects of it. So overall, like I just really, really love this scene, and am kind of looking forward to seeing like more of Hannah, but what she kind of looks like when she's actually doing a job. So really good.
Yeah. For critique, so I would have liked to see a little bit more just setting description, and maybe just a little bit more of like I feel like this is just a little bit floaty, where like the dialogue is really the only thing like keeping us in the actual scene. So just a little bit more description and like maybe slowing down the pace just a tiny bit by having maybe a larger paragraph of thought and stuff like that.
Because I mean, yeah, it would have been nice to at least get an idea of like what the bar kind of looks like, especially if I don't know. I kind of picked up that the job was going to get carried out here for some reason. So
yeah, but I really thought it was a really fun read. So really appreciate the submission, Captain Rhino.
Yeah. So next up is Zakatigi with The Sprawl.
So we have this description of the setting. This is one of the very cyberpunk stories. Actually, it's interesting. There's so much like jobs and assassinations and cyberpunk. Like it's so weird that we were all kind of on the same place, right? Not everyone, but almost everyone. It's interesting. Freighter, fame, restaurant, and theft doesn't like scream assassination to me or cyberpunk, but apparently it does for all of us subconsciously.
I don't know. Anyway, Freighter.
Yeah, I guess so.
That sounds very punky.
It does a bit, yeah. So we get this description of this kind of like underground synthetic city. It's like inside of a tunnel with like synthetic lighting from the top, and our character Cree, she's looking out through a very thin window. And the synthetic light is being filtered down from the scaffold. So, like, not only is it synthetic, it's also filtered through by other buildings and then through her tiny little, like, sliver of a window. So I was like, damn, this is a dark, dark place. And we get some nice melodramatic, like, classic kind of noir-ish. A
lot of drags on her cig.
Yeah, so she's smoking this, as we kind of end up understanding, this, like, extremely hot, like, heat generator kind of thing.
Where it
like
says that it's like fuel, right? It's powered by fuel.
Yeah. Yeah. So she's like smoking something that like would like melt someone's skin, basically, or like really burn you, a normal human. But she is modded. She's got synthetic lungs made for things hotter than burning fuel. And it tastes like embers and ash. So it's very like this nice drama. I really enjoyed it. So that's the opening. We kind of get some more description of the place. She's heating up her lungs to be almost super hot and just kind of holding that heat. And we at the beginning we kind of think that it's a metaphor, but it's actually like literal, because she's this sort of like a dragon kind of augmented person, like a person that's augmented to like breathe flames and fly, which I thought was really fascinating. And it's interesting because it's like cybernetic and not organic, and so I was kind of interested in finding out what this actually looks like, because she's got like dragon modifications, but I don't know if that she actually like has like a dragon snout, or if it's just like, aesthetically like scaled, and how much of it is like she looks like an actual dragon, how much of it is that's what this kind of augmentation with the fire and the flying is called. So that's one little thing that I would have liked some clarification on, but either way, it sounds super, super cool. So Kree, she's like a lower class, right? She's this kind of bodyguard for with a full gray draconian system, and her employers likely view fire breathing and flight as more of a nice bonus in her highly replaceable position. She works for kind of big people, and she's heavily kitted out. So yeah, so it's just interesting as seeing her particular space in this cyberpunk place. So she finally, the thing that's kind of bringing us through the scene is the smoke, which like cools and heats up as she smokes. And at the end, the heat in Kree's lungs begins to plateau, and once more she exhales the acrid smoke whistling as it spirals from her nostrils. Not long now, but for her next shift. And then she steps out, basically. She's got work to do. So it's a really cool description of this world and this character. I thought it was... just a fascinating kind of world being drawn out here.
Yeah, I mean, this story has fantastic world building. I mean, from the draconian augmentations just to the description of this world that this character is in, and it's really, really cool. Like, there's so much building going on here, and I would just kind of want to see what it looks like once she leaves her little perch, and like what the actual job looks like, and like are there other kinds of like fantasy-esque mods that people are kind of getting. Like, just reading this kind of fills my mind with so many questions about what the world could be, and I really love it for that.
Yeah, Zakateki talks about how this is in the comments, this is the same world as one of their other stories, which is the Body Shop, and I think we covered that one as well with that runner that went to the Body Shop, and we got that description with the mechanic with multiple arms. That was somewhere in the past episodes, which was also a really cool one. So it's interesting how this is kind of a totally different perspective on this place. For critique, I'm going to agree with some of the comments. The beginning is a little hard to parse because there's a lot of what feels like metaphorical language that isn't. So like there's a crushing mountain of what the people above called their society. So I wasn't sure if that was like they're literally under a mountain, or the society is like a crushing mountain. So perhaps, spreading out that metaphor, or grounding us in reality before we use metaphor, either way, just separating it out might be a good way to make us able to understand those things. But yeah, otherwise I really enjoyed the story, and I love the descriptions here. I think we get a good sense of what kind of person Kree is, how she's, of course, super jaded and basically, actually, I don't know what she quite wants, but I know because the heat in her lungs is both like good and bad, like it's this acrid smoke and stuff, but she's doing it anyway. So, I thought some of those things were really interesting.
Yeah, and I really love the usage of the noir tones in a cyberpunk story. I think they mesh really well. So really, really great job, Zakateki. Mm-hmm. All right, so next up is Paradox with Transaction 3.
So this is another entry in Paradox's series with the flock. The different sort of a criminal group, assassins group with the bird code names. So in this one, the sparrow has gone with the peacock, which is also called P. And P is this almost skeletal augmented person where they just feel like a robot. Like, yeah, I really like the description. It's very like uncanny valley and evocative. We can see their like two thin arms, and their face doesn't have any details on it except for the eyes, so I thought that was fascinating. The sparrow is trying to figure out why they've been sent to the peacock, because the peacock is not like an actual murderer, and then basically the peacock is going to take them on some tests. So first, the peacock gets dressed in a flesh suit, which is horrible sounding. Basically, Peacock opens a vault that's just like full of like human suits. They're artificial, but to me, they just sound like deflated humans, which is just horrible. Yeah, I hate it.
You have to put on your fresh skin.
Yeah, so they put on a human suit, and it's this beautiful woman. And I didn't realize it at first, but the color of her hair is the peacock colors, which I thought was a nice little detail. They go from blue to green, right? Just like a peacock. Anyway, so then the next section is them on the job. They go to a restaurant. They pick up this rich guy, and he's drunk. Although he's not actually drunk. They've like drugged him. They put him in a car, and then the sparrow is there's some of the other codename people there, including the mockingbird, and the sparrow has to figure out what they're gonna do here. Like what should be the punishment for this rich guy who's actually a human trafficker into like slavery and like bio-modded slaves and stuff, basically, which is horrible. And so like they deserve punishment in some way, and the sparrow is all about justice, as we've seen in the past couple entries, where they joined because they had killed some people who deserved it. And so they're offered a choice. And the sparrow decides to take a third choice, which is like almost even worse than the other two choices, which were just like murder the guy. And the sparrow kind of like wants to give them a fate worse than death. But it's also very like ironically justified. And so we kind of get the understanding that perhaps they did pass the test, as the other people in the other codenames in the limousine kind of exchange meaningful glances. So they're basically going to go on a spree and like kidnap all of the members of this slavery organization and like turn them into the things that they had that they were creating out of innocent people. So it's interesting because it's like a mix between they're definitely murderers, but they're maybe murdering murderers. Only bad people. Yeah, it's kind of hard to tell. So I really enjoyed this. It was that description was a bit long, I know, but it was a long story. I thought the dilemmas that the sparrow was facing were really interesting, and of course I love the description of Peacock. I thought the dilemma was really, really cool. And the like little twist there was of the sparrow's response was interesting. So I really enjoyed a lot of this.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, of course, this is just furthering a lot of the world building that was set up in the previous ones. We get a lot more of Sparrow, but also we're kind of allowed to get a lot more bits of the others that are on this team, and kind of getting a stronger idea of what their goal actually is. The biggest thing that I'm kind of excited about is that, you know, we've read the other two entries, but now they have a mission. So I kind of want to see how this team operates together when it comes to them actually like trying to take out this evil organization. So yeah, I'm just looking forward to the next one, and this one's really good. Yeah.
I don't have a lot of specifics to critique here. I think this is just a good entry, and I think Paradox just continuing in this setting is a really good way to get better in your writing. I think if I was to give critiques, it'd probably be on the sentence level, and that's really something that just like improves over time as you just get better and better.
What do you mean by sentence level?
Just like, you know, making phrases like flow better and be maybe more efficient and stuff like that. Yeah, it's kind of hard to critique over. Like, this is something that I would like want to like print out and like mark up to improve stuff. It's kind of hard to like give overall like wider critiques. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. So the next story is by
Ghost Pac-Man 4, which is out of control.
Yeah, I love the story. I'm going to start off by saying that. And if you haven't read it, maybe please do. So this is I think Ghost Pac-Man 4 did another story that had a character driving that I really enjoyed. This one's totally different. It just reminded me of that one. So it starts off with this character talking, and I almost want to just read it out entirely, maybe summarizing a little bit. It says, I've been having this dream lately. Nightmare. I'm in my car and I'm driving down the road, just cruising, and then someone jumps in front of me. A bad turn. I swerve. I fly in a parking lot, or a neighborhood, a school. I slam the brakes, but they don't work. I feel the wheels locking up. It's not enough. I slide through with no control, slam and crash into everything possible, but I don't slow down. I push down on the brakes harder and harder, gripping the wheel as hard as I can because I'm pushing myself out of my seat. Then I wake up. And then someone asks, what, you crash and that wakes you up? No, if I crashed, I would stop. I don't stop. Just keep hitting and bashing things until at some point I wake up. Don't crash head on with anything. So that's the central metaphor of this piece, and I thought it was like that's such a wonderful starting point. This character is actually, we find out this character is actually in a heist, like a group of people that do heists basically. Right now they're traveling in a freighter to get away from their last job where someone was killed, and they've definitely like all killed before too. And so this main character is just like through this dream is just like they're constantly like just like breaking things, constantly crashing into things, and the only way to stop is to crash because the brakes don't work. And so this is over the course of the story, we extend this metaphor to this character's real life. They're constantly doing these jobs and like hurting people, and it's constantly like one last job, And on the last one, they killed someone, and it messed up the main character so much they actually went to that person's funeral, or at least watched it, and then it went to the person who was killed's mom and like mom's house, and almost like went in but like didn't. And so as they were dealing with it, they basically walked to a bridge. We have another metaphor popping up with like steps to take, right? Like they could take one step into the place and like talk to the mom, and that'd be another step, and like there would be so many difficult steps, right? And then they went to the bridge, that'd be one step, and then it would be over because they'd jump off. And then they basically now they're with the rest of the people, and we have some characterization from the rest of the group as they all like think that he's kind of going crazy and needs to relax, and they're like offering some solutions. We get some kind of understanding of how this group works. And then at the end, basically, we get the implication that they plan to kill the group, touch the gun that's in their pocket, hold it, and they reaffirm to themselves that the only way to stop this is to crash, right? Yeah. So I love the metaphor here. I love all the internal conflict that this main character is having, and that final resolution is like chilling. As these characters that we've talked to this entire story, we know that this is ending in one particular way.
Yeah, so I just really love this sort of sinking guilt that's carried with this main character. And we can feel that throughout the entire piece as he's going to the funeral and like almost stepping into that to the person's home. And at the same time, I love the balance between what he's feeling and doing to the other member of his group, and how he feels that the decision to go to the funeral and try and go to the house is a completely wrong one. And even if he is feeling this guilt, like, he shouldn't let the guilt kind of eat him away. So, yeah, I think it's just a really great character-driven story that has such a fitting end to it. It was very unexpected, but I kind of see it ending no other way. So, yeah, really, really great read.
Yeah, surprising but inevitable, right?
Exactly, yeah. And also it works even better, especially with all of the metaphors being set up about being willing to take that step, and how the only way to stop is crashing, and how he has to take the step and crash by killing all of his teammates. So really, really tight story, and really brought it all home at the very end.
I think this is a really great contender for like something that you might want to like edit for a Doof the Right Thing or maybe the Doof Publishing book whenever we announce how that's going to work.
The Doof book.
Yeah, the Doof book. So the way that it like continually like keeps itself fresh by like having more realizations, right? Like learning that the main character like went to the funeral is like a surprise to us, and then like learning that they went to that mom's doorstep is even more of a shock, right? So I mean, we start off with this cool metaphor, and then we just get deeper and deeper into it. For my main critique, I would talk about how the other members of the group kind of all feel like one vague group voice. I know that I know that they are differentiated. Ghost Pac-Man 4 talks about in the comments how each one is like slightly different characterization. I think if I look for it, I can see it. If I pay attention to the dialogue tags, I can see that. But the problem is I didn't really pay attention to the dialogue tags. I think because our brain pretty quickly like learns to ignore that, and it's kind of without like physical descriptions. Yeah, without like descriptions of exactly who each character is and what like their role is, it was kind of hard to keep track, especially because I think there's more than two others. I think trying to consolidate those as much as possible. I think having probably two other voices is a good idea, but more than that might be a little bit too much. And then like doing a physical description, or like which character like which one is the leader, which one is like the planner, or some kind of like some other tag that we can latch onto to be like, this character is this character is that. Because without that, I think they just become names, and names alone are kind of hard to keep track of. So that's my main bit of critique there. But other than that, I mean, I love this. So I love this kind of metaphor, and this is a really this is not the first time that Ghost Pac-Man 4 has done this really fascinating metaphor stuff. So please keep it up, and maybe talk about how you do that.
Yeah, please. Just tell us how to do it. Give us your trade secret. All right, so thank you very much, Ghost Pac-Man 4.
The last story we're going to talk about is by Sarah Penguin.
With the Spy Master and the Princess, Siege of Burmoth Castle.
So this is basically in 3-ish parts. 3 scenes is what it feels like. We have this character, Faye, spelled differently from my face. It's totally different.
Different.
She's dressed as a maid. She's on the ramparts of a castle that is currently under siege. Castle is basically unprotected. It's like slated to fall eventually because the invaders have just like created a siege engine, a trebuchet, and the king's army is gone. The king is like a coward, and he's gone to hide at another castle. So it's just a matter of time, basically. Then she goes downstairs. We get some interaction with the guards. And she goes to the real maid, which she tied up and stole the clothes of. And so we're like, okay, there's something going on here. We kind of come to understand that she's definitely like not just a maid. She's some kind of assassin sort of type.
Some sort of insurgent.
Yeah. So I made the guess that she is the Spy Master, right? In the title. She goes to the torturer's chambers, because of course there's the torturer's chambers, and pretends to be a maid to like help him out with something. They're supposed to kill all the prisoners so that when the castle falls, the prisoners don't get free. And when the torturer's back is turned, she stabs him through the throat with a sword, and frees the prisoner right there, which is actually a princess who has been in this place for 12 whole years, which is horrible.
Jesus.
Yeah, and she had like this huge, like dark metal helmet thing on, like a face mask kind of thing to just like hide her and dehumanize her. It's horrible. Anyway, so Faye dresses the princess in more maid's clothing. They go to the king's room and distract some guards, go in, distract the guards, or the guards accept her excuses because they look at the princess's face, which they haven't seen before because it was covered up by the thing, and see her 12 years of horror, and they know that, like, they believe her just because of how horrible her face is, her expression, and so that, like, the princess doesn't have to act. Get in the king's room. Faye kills the guard in there, and they grab all the papers and coins in there. Then they go to leave, with the implication that the princess is going to be put on the throne, probably as a puppet, because it's her evil uncle that has stolen the throne. And so we basically set up for a future story. So I thought this was a cool adventure. We get how, like, competent Faye is, but we also see that she's not, like, a superhuman fighter. She has to kill the torturer by surprise, and then when she fights the guard, it feels kind of close. So we have this, like, she's not, like, invincible, and I kind of got the stakes going in just by the way that she goes about things in the subterfuge, rather than her just, like, hidden blade 360 no scoping whoever comes across her, right?
Yeah.
So I thought that was a cool way of kind of showing her character just through what she decides to do.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I really like this world that's being built here. I mean, and beyond that, like, as I was reading it, the story kept subverting what I thought it would be. Like, when we realized, oh, she's not the real maid, I was like, oh, this is interesting. And then, like, going down to the torture chamber and the princess being there for 12 years, like, it just seems so, like, it seems like it's this horrible world that we're kind of stepping into, and we're following this character of Faye whose intentions, of course she's there to save the princess, but I'm wondering, what's the goal after that? I see in the comments that Sarah Penguin said that they kind of rushed the final scene, and I do feel that somewhat, but at the same time, I feel that everything else leading up to that is really, really great, and just like a little bit of time to kind of fill out that very final scene would serve to kind of round out this story. But overall, I really loved reading it.
Yeah, I think with the final little fight, I think for me the problem is it happens in one paragraph, basically.
Yeah.
So I think just, like, spacing it out a little bit more and, like, having a breath in between the exchange of blows, right? Have the setting up, she's getting pressed, a little quick other description, and then she hits the guy back and is able to get him. I think just splitting up, like, the feeling of oh no, and oh yeah, I don't know if that makes any sense, but just, yeah, the feelings. I don't know, that's just an idea. I don't actually, I don't know if that is the perfect solve for the problem, but a suggestion nonetheless. I really enjoyed this. I think the main, I'm trying to properly identify, there was a sense of, like, one, like, I think it just probably just needs, like, a little cleaner flow from idea to idea. It's hard to put my finger on exactly what it is.
How I kind of felt like, to me, is that between certain, like, sections, it felt like there was a jump cut, if that makes sense. So just, I don't know, those transitional moments, and, like, I feel slowing down and definitely letting this story naturally unfold instead of course, having to go with, like, plot point, which, of course, I mean, if you're writing in 30 minutes, and you said that you even ran out of time, so it makes perfect sense. But, if you do choose to revisit this, I think, letting a lot of these moments kind of sit for a little while longer can definitely elevate the story.
Yeah, I think that might be it. There's a lot of, like, rushing around and stuff. So yeah, maybe upon entering, like, new environments, it feels like it's like these things maybe should be, like, separate scenes, or maybe, like, spaced out a bit more, because it feels like this is, like, one long run. I think that's what it is. Like, it feels like
she's dashing across the castle.
Yeah, she's going from one place to another rather than, like, one place, we see the place, and then she does the thing that she's in there for. I think this is a really good story. I think this is really good practice as well. There's a lot of things Sarah Penguin is doing here, and every time, that you try out a different thing, like a fight scene or dialogue, or this, I like at the beginning this description of the castle, and how we get kind of phase feelings on it, not really liking the defenders or the attackers. So yeah, a lot happens in the story, and I think this is a really good way to improve on a variety of skills.
Yeah, definitely. So thank you very much, Sarah Penguin. Yeah, those are all of the stories for this week. If you were not selected, that is fine. Don't get mad. You can always try again next week. All you have to do is set a timer for 30 minutes and use 3 of the 4 randomly generated words for that week.
And then you'll get glad.
You will get glad.
Get sad, get glad. Yeah, so we want to thank everyone that submitted. So thank you very much to Ace of Sword.
Thank you, Captain Rhino.
Thank you, Zakatigi.
Thank you, Paradox.
Thank you, Ghost Pac-Man 4.
Thank you, Sarah Penguin.
And thank you so much to Niall Supernum, who I know hasn't written in a while, and they're joining back up. Actually, quite a few people have come back for the first time in a while, and I really appreciate you guys doing that. And hopefully maybe keep up your streak. It's a lot easier to keep this up weekly if you don't take any breaks from it. I also want to thank all the people who left comments. You also got increased chances to get selected. You guys did a really great job. It was really satisfying to open the comments and see not only just like 1 or 2 comments, but like a whole, like a back and forth between the author and the person commenting. That was fantastic. So Thank you so much to Ace of Sword, Paradox, Zakatigi, Sarah Penguin, and Captain Rhino. You guys did a fantastic job. If you want to be like all these wonderful people and want to do the right thing, you can go to /r/do the right thing on Reddit. Then you can also find the words as soon as possible on. Now it's getting closer to being almost every Saturday. I'm almost getting consistent. And classes will be over soon, so at the very least, then I'll be able to do this on Twitter by following @RightThingCast.
Mm-hmm. Also, if you want to send us a good old-fashioned email, whether if you want us to post your story for you, if you don't have Reddit for some reason, or just want to talk to us about either your story or certain things, you can send us a email, which is rightthingcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, you can be like Sonic Drive-In, who sent us an email saying you won't want to miss these deals. Treat yourself with Sonic.
Sonic.
We've been getting a lot of spam email. I think someone found our email. I think it's probably just like a bot, but they found our email and just like put us signed us up for like literally every email service.
They finally.
So I've been getting a lot of Domino's and Sonic advertisements. So not super fun, but that's the part of being a public figure like our podcast is.
Yeah, being a pinnacle of the public. So, Matias, hey, what's going on in Doof?
There's plenty going on in Doof, but the main thing I want to plug is that I was on the Doofcast recently to talk about Cowboy Bebop. So that was a really great discussion with Scott and Matt, who normally hate anime, but they liked Cowboy Bebop decently enough, and I was there to pump it up a little bit further as well. Yeah. I'm not an anime connoisseur, but I do enjoy it. So
I would call you a anime connoisseur personally.
Wow, that's high praise from you.
You know more than the average bear.
I guess so. I mean, I'm not a weeb. But I enjoy it every now and then. Anyway, so we talked about Cowboy Bebop. It was a really, really good discussion. At the end of it, I felt like I had talked about everything, and then afterwards, I realized there was so much more I wanted to talk about. So if you're on the Discord, at me in the anime chat, and let's talk about it. So. Yeah, it was a really good discussion. If for those who don't know, Cowboy Bebop is widely known as like one of the best anime ever. Mm-hmm. Very Western. Which I don't know if it quite deserves that term. I mean, but it's really really good.
Yeah, and also I think it's because of like when it came out and how dubbing was actually like fairly decent there. So it was one.
Oh yeah, the dub is great.
Yeah, so it was definitely one of the first anime that could reach a wider audience, which is probably why people see it as the best. I mean, it's super good. Just it is a 1999 anime.
Yeah, I've of course not hating on it. I really really enjoyed it. Although I had to binge the last like 7 episodes in one day because I didn't know I was appearing on the Doofcast until like that day. So that was fun. Yeah, I finished it with 30 minutes to spare before we started recording. So.
Oh wow.
Anyway, So maybe go check that out. And of course, there's so many other fantastic things going on in the Doof network. Of course, we also reached that Patreon goal, and I'm going to be starting a podcast soon. Not ready to quite announce exactly what it is, but it is worm related because we never have enough Wildbow podcasts. So that'll be with me and Clarence, and that's starting pretty damn soon.
Yeah. So please keep an ear to the ground for when Matias will finally come out with all the goods.
That's right. If you like what we do here at Doof Media, with Do the Right Thing and all the cool things we do, I think they're very cool. Like, genuinely. That's not just me pumping it up. I'm a fan as well as a creator. It's interesting.
It sounds like a conflict of interest.
I mean, a little bit. Like, I listen to other podcast networks, what's the one that the McElroy brothers are on? They're in the Maximum Fun network, where like I kind of listen to it sometimes, and like I feel like they do like the other people, but I don't know if they like actually like are they like friends? You know, like I don't know. There's like a little bit of some kind of difference there, but I feel like with the Doof Media Network, like we all like interact daily. Like we're much more of a unit than. Like I'm not talking against Maximum Fun. They do amazing work. I listen to like 4 or 5 other podcasts at least, but it can just feel like more of a corporation. And I feel like with just the like 8 of us, it feels pretty tight knit and stuff like that. I don't know. I just like the sense of community.
It is very homey, honestly.
Yeah, and if you want access to that hominess, consider becoming a patron at the $1 level or more. That gives you access to the Discord, where we do so much. Yeah, absolutely. We're also, a little bit of a teaser, planning to do a little bit more with our $10 Patreon level. And we'll have more to talk about that in the future. But pretty soon, that's going to be a real tier with real rewards, because as of now, it mostly... has access to like doof writing and a couple other things. Like, we just want to make sure to give the proper rewards for someone who donates a whole $10 every single month to us, because that's amazing.
I know, that's like almost the cost of Netflix.
Yeah. What else? I think that's all we have this week. So let's find out the words for next week, Jarvis.
So the words for next week are, drum roll please. All right. The words are ballot, pilot, trial, and trust.
And so, the words are ballet, as in to do ballet, plot, as in like the plot of a story, or to plot something, to hatch a plot, which is to...
Plotting.
To create a scheme, or plot, as in like my plot of land. So like my little section of land. So those are some options. I'm sure there's other definitions, but those are the ones I can remember. Trial, as in like to have a trial for something, or trial as in like a test, and trust, to trust someone else, or a economic trust, like a trust fund. So lots of options here. It's interesting how these things sometimes create themes of their own. I feel like ballet and trust really go together. There's also just like a sense of like plotting among like aristocracy with like the ballet and stuff like that. So a lot of options here.
Yeah. So Matias, what story are you going to write next week?
Yes. So,
well, I guess you're not writing a story next week.
No, I'm not writing a story, but I will write a story right now. Next week will be Jarvis's week. So I've recently hatched a plot. The lead ballet person, the main person, I have no idea. I don't know any ballet terms.
It's lead.
Sure. Is she's the center of my plot. I'm going to assassinate her during the third trial of the dance of the Mooner blots. During the main during the main bit of the third trial, there's a part where she does some pirouettes and then gets tossed up in the air for a trust fall, and I've bribed the person who's supposed to catch her, the other guy, to not catch her, and so she'll die. That's my plot. The end.
That's a really good story.
Uh-huh.
Next week, my story shall start as such. I see them in the woods, glistening and writhing with wonderful bubbles. It's quite beautiful for my little perch. But they whisper at night. They plot against me of all people, their wonderful guardian that watches over them all night long. Sometimes, in the wee hours of the night, on the third floor of my small flat, I can hear the subtle sounds of ballet, the tipper-tapper of tiny feet on hard wood floor. It's kind of beautiful, and it calls me to sleep. But when I do sleep, it's only nightmares, trials and tribulations my wayward soul has to go through simply to get back to the here and now. But I trust them. I trust the things out in the woods, because as I watch them, they watch over me.
Wow. That was some beautiful nonsense, Jarvis.
Hey, that is all I do. I'm just one big bottle of beautiful nonsense.
Yeah, and we hope that our wonderful little podcast nonsense that we do every week will help you do the right thing.
Do the right thing. Wow. Were we in sync?
Not on my end at all, but that's okay.
Oh.
We'll fix it in post.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we're just